This is Rick Ruo for the Vancouver Natural Resources Investment Symposium 2021 virtual edition. I'm delighted right now to interview Amir Adnani, who has been a friend of the conference for many years, despite his young age. Serially successful entrepreneur and a young man who I've known for the better part of 2 decades, I think. Amir, first of all, thank you for your continued sponsorship of the conference and welcome to this year's edition.
It's my pleasure, Rick, to connect with you and to have this discussion.
We're moving on to one of my favorite topics, as you know, Amir, the uranium market. There are many things that we could talk about in terms of uranium, but this audience has heard from me. Perhaps you could give us a brief overview of the uranium market as you see it, and the prospects for uranium investors and speculators in the next couple of years from the point of view both of the Uranium Energy Corp and Uranium Royalty.
I'd like to start at the highest level possible, and it's on the demand side. It's about population growth, and with population growth comes two very important mega trends that are underway right now. We have electrification in terms of how we handle transportation, and we have decarbonization. These are incredible backdrops coupled with population growth in driving ongoing and increased demand for nuclear power. Because what nuclear power provides, being that baseload, emission-free electricity, the world needs more than ever. And in order to meet the decarbonization and electrification goals, we've seen commitments from countries, from companies, the net zero commitments to be satisfied by 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And Rick, in the sort of 15 to 20 years that I've been involved in uranium, and yourself longer, the trends from a demand and macro side have never been this strong before, in my opinion, coupled with the fact that we're coming out of a decade-long bear market for uranium. We've seen the longest bear market for uranium than any other commodity, underinvestment in uranium mines. So just as the world is relying more on nuclear power, we're seeing restarts. That's going on a head-on collision with a fact that the supply side is thin, has not done anything over the last decade, and really sets up the stage beautifully to see the uranium price get back to incentive price levels. We're at $30 a pound right now. 80% of mines in the world can't make money at $30 uranium. Incentive prices are $45 to $50. And true incentive price, adjusted for inflation, adjusted for a proper IRR, is probably north of $70 per pound.
So you're addressing this in your own portfolio and on behalf of your investors 2 different ways. And let's talk about these sequentially. Your first company started almost when you were in diapers, was UEC, Uranium Energy Corporation, a US-focused uranium company. Tell us something about the investment attributes of UEC and how that fits into your uranium thesis.
Uranium Energy for the last 15 years has been focused on acquiring, developing, and mining uranium using the low-cost and environmentally friendly in-situ recovery method. This is important because, again, as we look at how, let's take a country like the US, is going to embrace nuclear power, how the Biden administration is going to embrace nuclear power, really will be with the types of uranium mining to support nuclear power generation that don't have big impact, that are not high impact mines. When you look at the rise right now of ESG investing, the focus of ESG really is on the most efficient, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible ways of mining and conducting business. This is where in-situ recovery excels. Really urge everyone who's listening to this and hearing it for the first time, check out our website, uraniumenergy.com/ISR, stands for in-situ recovery. This type of mining uranium is what our company specializes in. It was invented and developed in the US over 30 years ago. And in fact, it's often overlooked that in uranium mining, in-situ recovery plays the biggest role. The biggest source of uranium today is the country of Kazakhstan. All the mines in Kazakhstan are using the in-situ recovery method. So in-situ recovery focuses on low-grade deposits that are sandstone hosted. We have a hub and spoke operation focused on this in South Texas, where we have a processing plant with a 2 million pound per year capacity. We have an in-situ recovery project in Wyoming, Reno Creek. It's the largest pre-construction, fully permitted uranium project in the United States. And Rick, just yesterday, the announcement came that Bill Gates is committing to building with TerraPower, the small modular reactor company that he's backed. They're building a small modular reactor in the state of Wyoming, in place or at the site or location of where there used to be a coal-fired power plant. And so there really is this incredible development going on in the U.S. right now, in the U.S. market, where the U.S. has more electricity generation coming from nuclear power that's emission-free than any other source of electricity. Nuclear power is the second largest source of electricity generation in the country. But there's no uranium mining in the U.S. It's all being imported primarily from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. So we really think that not only does nuclear power play a role in the U.S. energy mix, but a company like UEC can provide the very necessary supply chain. The supply chain for nuclear fuel starts with uranium. And if you can get some of your uranium requirements, if you're one of over 90 operating reactor units in the US, if you can get some of that from your own backyard, just 100 miles from our Hobson processing plant are the South Texas project units that are operating and providing electricity to millions of homes just in the South Texas region. So we are proud of the fact that we control the largest base of fully permitted uranium resources in the country. We have over 100 million pounds of uranium in all categories. And we are fully permitted for production. What really sets UEC apart is the production-ready capabilities using in-situ recovery. And look, with a very strong balance sheet and physical uranium holdings to back it, UEC today has over $115 million in cash, physical uranium, and equity holdings, all uranium related. And our physical uranium holdings are going to come in very handy to help accelerate cash flow. When we look to resume production, it's going to take a ramp-up time for any mine to restart. And having existing inventory on hand is going to be a very important part of being able to market to utilities, accelerate cash flow from existing inventory on hand. And so we have all those components available at UEC. And it's taken us 15 years to really invest in the human capital, in the resources, the physical inventory, to be in this lead position to take U.S. uranium production higher and be a global player in uranium mining.
Let's move on now to your more recent corporate incarnation, uranium royalty. This is an interesting conjunction of two themes that have both been very good to me, frankly. The royalty and streaming business has been extremely good to me, and the uranium business has been amazingly good to me. You had the good sense to combine these two themes into one company, Uranium Royalty. So perhaps you could tell us something about what you've been able to do, why you've combined these two to begin with, what you've been able to do, and what you look forward to being able to do over the next 2 or 3 years.
It was the marriage that you just talked about, the marriage of these two themes that are dear to our hearts, uranium sector and the royalty sector. And the obvious void, the very clear void of the lack of a dedicated uranium-focused royalty company in the world. The last decade, as we have focused in dealing with the post-Fukushima struggles in the uranium sector, the royalty sector completely surpassed anyone's expectations, mainly focused on precious metals. Over $25 billion has been invested by royalty and streaming companies focused on precious metals. And we saw in last year's bull market rally for gold equities that they traded at far better multiples, the royalty guys, than the producers and developers themselves. And that, again, the sheer fact that a dedicated pure play company didn't exist in uranium, to me as an entrepreneur, to yourself, Rick, as the very first and early backer of uranium royalty, along with our very good and mutual friend, Marian Katusa, seemed like an obvious, if anyone's going to do it, let's get on and do it. And we created Uranium Royalty Corp just over the last few years. But really, the company over the last year of being a public company has really executed on a strategy whereby it is today the only pure play uranium royalty company in the world. The name adequately says that, Uranium Royalty Corp. It is backed by uranium energy, It has other corporate shareholders like Altius, another diversified royalty player that you've backed for many years, and others than the likes of Mega Uranium, for example. Uranium Energy Corp, the other company we talked about, owns just under 20% of uranium royalties. So that's a key holding and a very interesting strategic asset for uranium energy. But back to uranium royalty, when you can put together in an up-and-coming company royalties, and you're acquiring these royalties at the bottom of the cycle, so you're taking advantage of the still low uranium price environment. We've acquired royalties on blue chip assets, the likes of McArthur River and Cigar Lake. These are the highest grade uranium mines that are operated by major companies like Cameco and Orano. We've acquired royalties on these assets. We've acquired royalties on the likes of Rough Rider, a deposit owned by Rio Tinto. So we're assembling what you want to see in a royalty business, a diversified suite of royalties with a diversified base of counterparties from major producers to explorers and developers. We've combined the royalty interests that we have on projects throughout North America and Africa, and your favorite, Langer Heinrich, with the success that you've had with Paladin, the royalty that we have on that deposit. We've combined all of that with physical uranium ownership. We've acquired physical uranium, and we've acquired a physical stake in a company called Yellowcake that's listed in London, giving us, again, direct physical exposure. And as you know, we have a supply agreement, and you were an early backer of this 10-year supply agreement that we signed along with Yellowcake with Kazatomprom, the world's largest uranium producer. All these assets are inside of Uranium Royalty, and just recently we announced an uplisting to the NASDAQ market. And so Uranium Royalty is now also the only uranium-focused equity listed on the entire NASDAQ exchange. And so the stage is set because the company is now really properly set up with a fantastic suite of royalties and physical uranium ownership and a supply agreement, all of which underpins a strong foundation, a strong balance sheet of over $70 million of cash and other liquid assets, to be in the lead position to be a source of capital and an alternative source of capital to the uranium sector in the years to come. As we enter the next bull market for uranium, Rick, you and I both know the supply side has to grow. The supply side, we haven't seen a single new uranium mine get built in the entire world over the last decade in any kind of meaningful way. I hope it doesn't become some kind of lost art and science, but it will take time to replenish the human resources. A lot of capital will be needed. As we saw in the gold sector, royalties can play a beautiful role. The royalty company has a lower cost of capital in some cases than what the company's own equity cost of capital or perhaps debt would be. It plays beautifully alongside equity and debt to provide more firepower and more capital to the sector. And we're proud of the fact that, and you know, you've led the way in terms of innovation in this sector, financially speaking, that's helpful. Whether it's the latest announcement with Sprott's takeover of UPC, which is a very key and exciting catalyst for the sector, to being an early backer and founder of Uranium Royalty Corp, another source of financial innovation for the uranium sector. I'm proud that and excited, Rick, of the fact that you've backed these two companies, have been a shareholder in them and a backer in both Uranium Energy and Uranium Royalty.
No, I suspect that in conjunction with the conference, that this interview will be viewed several thousand times, and there will be a fairly large number of investors and speculators interested in uranium. If they care, and I think they should, about this interview, how do they contact you? How do they get in touch with your companies and with you?
Well, we'll be available throughout your conference. And so if they're catching this during the conference itself, we'll be there. Otherwise, please visit us at uraniumenergy.com or uraniumroyalty.com. Uranium Royalty is listed on the NASDAQ, ticker symbol UROY, and UEC is on the NYSE American, ticker is UEC. And really, also you can follow me on Twitter at Amir Adnani, my first and last name. So plenty of different ways to connect with us, but most importantly, hopefully at the conference, live, virtual.